comes. Hang on. And then I'll hit the record on the other one as well, so we can get it going both ways. All right, hang on, here it goes. Okay. We're on YouTube right now. Fantastic. Okay, let me just get out of that one so I don't hear myself talking. And now we're going to go ahead and put on the record. So all you who are watching that are not here right now, you're going to be getting this replay. I'm just getting things set so we can make sure we don't lose this recording. Okay, so everything's being recorded right now. So welcome everybody. I was just mentioning earlier that we do have some regulars here that come, and this is a very interactive type of a session. This is, when we say webinars, I think it's not one of those type of talking head situations where you're just listening. Shane's going to lead the way. He's going to give you this great information from his experience, and then you'll get to participate. You'll put your camera on, you'll be able to speak. Those of you who are already familiar with the process here, you know that it's a very family-oriented type of environment. We want to get to know y'all, and feel free to ask all the questions you have. Shane he's gracious enough to come. As you know, he works with some very large companies, and they pay him a lot of money. You have an opportunity now to be able to take advantage of Shane. He wants to, right now, he understands that we're all in this Corona thing, and he figures the best way he can do to help things along is to be helpful. And so Shane, I'm going to let you take it from here. And if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in. We can get to them, or just wait until you can unmute, and Shane will get to them.
Great. Thanks, Abraham. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. Welcome back, some of you. Nice to meet some of you for the first or second time. All right, we're going to talk about engagement today, one of my favorite topics, because everyone hears the word employee engagement, throws it around, and there's just so many different variations of what it actually means. And so from a customer experience kind of perspective, I think it's actually one of the most critical elements to understand as a leader, how to actually truly engage your people that actually starts to deliver some results. Like always, I just provide a bit of an introduction about myself, my background, and my philosophies, and this whole idea of Culture Hacker, which is the book that I wrote a couple of years ago, really to try and understand about this whole element of employee journeying, which started with my work in customer experience. Background is Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company, worked in a lot of hospitality groups, but we've really branched out over the years, working with BMW, United Airlines, Westfield, Malls, Christie's Auction House, the NBA, NFL, a lot of different groups, all on the customer experience side. For us, customer experience, product, place, process, and people. And a lot of what companies like us were doing was doing the customer journey mapping, finding out the real specific key moments in the customer journey, and then looking how to elevate that in a meaningful way. I think one of the key pieces, if you haven't read any of Daniel Kahneman's work, I highly recommend that you do so. He is in all sense, a behavioral psychologist, but so much more in terms of his work that really tried to understand memory. One of the things that I think is really important, whether you're on the CX or EX side, is to remember that memory is more like a series of photos rather than a video. And I think that's a really important piece. It applies to so much of what you do. Experience, memories, is more about a series of photos than it is a video. What that means, and what his research has found, is that when people talk about experience, they're really referring to one or two key moments in that experience rather than everything in the experience. So the video, it records everything. Therefore, we often think that everything counts in terms of customer experience and employee experience. And that's actually not true. What the key part of this is to understand what those key moments are. We've done a lot of work, in mapping these key moments. We did it for BMW in terms of a sales, how to sell a car. There were 8 key moments that really defined whether or not someone had a great experience buying a car or not. Gallup a few years ago mapped overnight stays. A one-night stay, 24 hours for a guest, had about 1,200 individual touch points, but only 5 or 6 that truly mattered. And so as you're thinking about your customer experience, as we did, we really started to focus in on these key moments. And in each of those moments, product, place, process, people, how to have, what things were having the biggest impact, how to turn them up, turn them on, make obviously make the customer feel good. In that process, it led us over to starting to think more about the people element, because at each moment along the way, obviously people play a huge part in this. And what we're seeing more and more is that the people element truly plays probably the biggest part. Uh, as a result of that, we started shifting not just from doing customer experience mapping, but really to employee experience mapping, trying to understand what were the key moments in the employee experience or the employee journey that was having a huge impact on them. And that's really kind of starts to capture where we are today. And why we're talking about one of those key areas on the map is this idea of engagement. Just to take you a little bit back, some of you have seen this before. I always kick off my culture hackers kind of in the same way, just to kind of understand attitude, culture, and leadership. I put this up every time because this is where we started. The Ritz-Carlton used to talk about this idea: a person with a great attitude delivers great service, a person with a poor attitude delivers poor service. We talk about that every day because, again, we understood that for our customer experience or our guest experience, how our employees felt about what they did and who they did it for was really, really important. So we'd always be talking about attitude. And what's interesting is, that was something that sat with me 25 years ago. What's interesting is as I've started to work a lot more on culture, what I've learned and what we've sort of researched is that culture is really the collective attitudes of a group of people. And so it's important to kind of think about that, because as a leader, that group of people is your main focus each and every day. And as a manager, always ask yourself, what is the collective mindset and attitude of my employees today? How do they feel about what they do and who they do it for? The reality is, with the virus, so many things going on, we have a lot of employees that don't collectively feel really strong right now, which is why your leadership, I think, is more important than ever before. But on any given normal circumstances, your collective group should feel good about coming to work every day. That doesn't mean there's not an employee that's not feeling bad or off or sleepy or just not on top of their game. What we'd always recognize is that 1 or 2 people who are out of sync, the rest of the team tends to overcompensate. And that's okay. Where it starts to become a problem if it's the same person off every day, when you have someone that is always a drag on the team. And that's why this idea of the collective for me is probably the most critical idea that I've sort of come across in terms of understanding culture. You're going to have people that are off, but overall, does your team feel good? I think that the piece then comes, as I sort of said, we started to look at the employee experience and the employee journey, and we started to understand the different behaviors, elements, and that were sort of coming into play. And what we understood is that this attitude manifests itself in employee behavior. We were seeing how they interact with the customers. Obviously, that attitude has a big impact. What I think is important for companies to understand is that those behaviors are now carrying over to reputation, particularly in this online social media environment. We're very transparent. Your company is talked about probably online more than anything else. And as a result, we have to understand that employee attitude is really having a big part in reputation today. Reputation is your brand, meaning these social media communities, these websites that are talking about your product, your service, your business, they're having more impact today than all the advertising and marketing that you're doing. So as I sort of said, we started to map a little bit the different mechanisms, activities, managers that were influencing. And we really came up with kind of 12, if you've read my book or seen my book, there's kind of 12 different elements. And what we've been doing with Abraham is we've been kind of going through some of these every week just to kind of give you some of these insights. Again, if you want to reach out, we've talked about leadership, values, selection, orientation, onboarding, enable and empowerment. We have recordings of those. If you're interested, please reach out. Because again, the idea is just to give you a little bit perspective. But where we are talking today is about one of my, as I said, one of my favorites is it's engagement. And I can't overstate the importance of employee engagement. But what, as I sort of said, we have to be able to do is start to break it down and understand what these drivers are. And so this definition for me is probably the most important one I can give you. And please take note of it. Employee engagement is your employees' interest and involvement in helping your organization get better. And so that piece is really important, interest and involvement. Okay. Now, that's an important engagement. How are they interested and how are they involved? If you're going to be successful as an organization, the one thing I'll tell you as a manager, you need to have your employees very interested and very involved. And yet, so many organizations we come into, we see the employees are being placed on the peripheral in terms of company success. Decisions are made, objectives are set, all of these things happen around them. And there's this kind of perspective or even attitude sometimes that we come across that, well, the employees don't need to know that. They're just here to do a job. When you have that type of mentality, it's going to be very hard to be successful. They are not going to be interested in helping you and they're not going to be involved. And what I'll tell you as a manager is that if you don't have that interest and involvement, it makes your job so much more difficult. So the piece then that we've started to look at, and with our research and sort of our experiences, well, how do you get them interested and involved? Obviously, there's a lot of elements that come into it, but we've found 4 that we want to focus in on and talk about today. The first thing they need to know is what your objectives and goals are as an organization and as a department. As we're going to talk about, one of the biggest failings is that we don't share with our employees what we're trying to achieve, which is kind of crazy. We're asking them to help in that achievement, and yet they don't know what the goals are. So that's the first sort of mistake we see. The second one is that they're not kept updated with what we call the scores or the feedback. How are you doing on a weekly, probably more likely a monthly basis as you progress through your annual or your financial calendar year? Keeping them updated with the scores and keeping them, whether it's success or failure, is a critical part of them feeling connected to the business. So again, another area where we see managers and organizations not doing as well. The third one, which is a big one, asking them for ideas. They want to feel that they can contribute. And again, I've seen a lot of organizations do this somewhat, effectively, where they ask for ideas and get input. And I think it's important to understand that they are the key to some of your best ideas. And so making sure that you're utilizing them and having an effective and efficient manner to collect those ideas is critical. I'll also tell you that this has to be an expectation to contribute ideas, which we'll talk about. And then the other piece is assigning responsibility for implementation. I often see a lot of organizations when it's only the manager who's responsible for implementation. That means that there's a lot of things that get missed out or looked over. Again, make sure everyone feels a part of implementation. Assign responsibilities. This is a great opportunity to develop some leadership skills in some of your employees, give some of your junior, younger managers an opportunity to grow, but make sure that it's a collective. And again, I go back to that. To create true engagement, we have to make sure that these 4 steps are following on. And this is, I love this quote, strategy, which really, talks about your objectives. When it cascades through the organization, when people see that how they fit, how they contribute, that is probably the biggest single impact in their engagement. They have to know that they can make a difference, and they have to understand that they play a part in the overall success of the organization. So I want to kind of break some of these down a little bit more as we sort of get into today. So, sharing objectives and goals. Management, I love this. Management by objectives works if you know the objectives. 90% of the time, they don't. What does that mean? Is that we're not good at sharing this information with our employees. We often think that this is something that they don't need to know about. And if I can urge you on one thing, it's probably one of the most critical things that they need to know about. Obviously, each year the company sets about and establishes some goals for based of success, or at least I hope you do. The piece then comes, what do you do with that? Does it sit at the executive level, at a very high level in your organization, or do you cascade it down so that each department has their own objectives, own goals that ultimately contribute to the company's success? In the best organizations that we've seen out there, we've seen that cascade of objectives come down to the individual employee, which means that they have certain goals that they may or may not be involved with that contributes to the bigger goal based on their job, their responsibilities, etc. Let me kind of go into this a little bit more. When you look at objectives or goals, there's called what we call the big five. Depending on your organization, you may have 3 or 4, but there's generally 5 objectives that most organizations think about. Obviously, the easiest one is financial, your P&L. I get it. You're going to have a goal. How much money do you want to make this year? How much do you want to take to the bottom line? Every company has it. If not, they're not going to be a company for very long. So that's generally the most common objective that's out there. So start with that. How well have you shared your financial goals for this year with your employees? I think one of the things that I find most interesting is that there's still companies out there that have this mentality of like, hey, the employees don't need to know how much money we're making or losing. I mean, that's kind of crazy in today's transparent world because most of them will just look it up online, particularly obviously in more public organizations. But again, they're going to find this information out. So this whole idea of protecting the financials of how well we're doing, we don't want our employees to know we're doing so well or so badly. It's kind of crazy. As I said, transparency in this world, they're going to probably find out anyway. They can probably tell anyway. It's better to be upfront. So your financial, that's generally the easiest one. The next one I think is really important is your sales sort of objectives. And for me, this is about market share. Probably more than anything else when we're working with companies right now with the COVID, there's so much craziness going on. A lot of organizations obviously aren't being financially successful. So even if they're not financially successful, the next number I focus in on is your market share. If overall you're not doing as well as you did last year, and yet your market share is still strong, which means your percentage of ownership of the market is still there, then you're doing something right. In some cases, we're seeing people actually increase their market share, even though the financial position might not be there. Let's face it, people aren't buying as much. There are many reasons right now why the financial position might not be as strong as last year, but the market share can be, which means your percentage of market share is critical. What I also flip that on is what the danger would be. Some companies we've worked with having a very good financial year, and yet their market share is slipping. For me, market share is probably one of the most important things to focus in on is, again, is your percentage of loyal customers or percentage of market increasing? For me, that's something that you want to see on a day-to-day basis. We work with BMW. And again, it's interesting, in North America, there's like 460 odd dealerships. So, these BMW dealerships are all over the country. And it's interesting because they have their little market, generally where all the other car dealerships are in and around them. And in any given city, when people are buying a lot of cars, your car dealerships are generally financially strong. Their P&L is looking pretty good. What's interesting is when we've worked with them and started to look at market share, and though while they might be financially strong, they're actually losing market share considerably, which means it's eroding because their competitors are chipping away. Just because they're selling more cars right now, or at least in the last couple of years because of a strong economy, doesn't mean the business is healthy. So market share for me is a really big one that I always look at closely and I talk about with the employees a lot. Customer satisfaction, probably know about that. As I sort of said, well, what's the feedback? How are your customers feeling? Employee engagement. Again, I want to go back. Employee engagement, a measurement of their involvement and interest in helping you. That number is very, very specific. We do a lot of customer or employee satisfaction surveys, and obviously we see a lot of them. What's most interesting is how few employee satisfaction surveys actually measure that idea of how interested and involved you feel you are towards the success of our organization. Put that question into your satisfaction survey, look at it, and pay close attention to it. It'll tell you a lot about how interested and involved and how truly engaged your people are. And then the final one we're seeing a lot more of today is community involvement. Again, a lot of organizations are having a goal every year about how much they contribute, hours, sometimes monetary, into the community. It's become quite an important one for a lot of employees, particularly younger employees. So we're starting to see that come out a little bit more. So they're your 5 big objectives. Now, obviously, you'll have lots of little objectives in there, but they'll all fit into one of those categories for the most part. And that's why we talk a lot about how well you've shared your big five, big four, big three. I'm doing a company right now that, again, they only have financial, customer, and employee. So they've got their big three. Even some smaller companies are really more focused on financial. But what they've done is they've understand what their big objectives are, and that they're communicating it to their employees so that they feel that they are part of what it is that we're doing. So the first question I kind of put out to you then as a group, and again, if anyone wants to kind of share, is to think about that. How well and how are you sharing the goals or objectives of your organization with your employees? How far are you pulling this down, which means, are you pulling it right down into individual goals? For instance, financial, profit and loss. I know in our warehouse for one of the businesses we work with, it means each individual employee that works in the warehouse, they have a goal about loss. Loss is big, whether it's, and again, theft in some ways, but breakage. All of these things contribute in, and they have a goal where they know how they contribute by limiting loss in the warehouse. So that's how their individual goals contributes to the larger P&L. So I'm just interested if anyone out there has any sort of thoughts on that, about how they pull and share objectives throughout their business. So let's go. Chris, I see you right there in front of me, man. So what about for you guys? Anything that you do? You're off mute. You've got it.
Coming off of mute, I think. Can you hear me now?
Got it.
God, so it's such an interesting topic for the company that I work at. And for those on the call, I work for a company called Cambria. We're a manufacturer of quartz surfaces, predominantly used in kitchen countertops. We are a small, I like to think of us as small, but we're getting bigger, but privately owned company. And so Shane, the topic you're talking about here is sharing financial goals. That is something this company has never done. And I can promise you, we are not going to do it. I know the owner, and that's just not a direction that we're going to go. And so for a company like us that's private, and we do not have to disclose financials publicly, how do I engage my team around this topic? What suggestions do you have on that?
Yeah, listen, great. And listen, you're not the only one out there. So
Yeah.
what you need to be able to do is, listen, they're not going to do the big picture, but you need to still have financial goals. Now, what I would do is, instead of overall P&L, which is, hey, what is the bottom line number that you might make? What you want to be able to do is, within that is, there's revenues and there's expenses. So within those bigger goals, what you want to establish is, if you've got a team that's focused on sales, they should have a revenue goal, and they probably have that. Just as I sort of said, on the inside, those that work behind the scenes might have a manage expense goal. So you can create some smaller goals. Obviously, it all has to link into the overall, how much money do we make as a small company? That's the overall objective. But within that, you can set some smaller objectives that will contribute ultimately to the goal. And at the same time, you can take this down to the front line so that each individual knows how they contribute ultimately to the financial position of the company.
No, and that makes a lot of sense to me, right? It's we're not going to get the big picture P&Ls. That's not happening. But I like that concept of breaking it down to the smaller team level. I've got two teams that I manage. One is our customer care team. The other is our inside sales team. Both different sets of metrics, which you touched on, right? The sales goals will be just that, some sales goals at an individual smaller level. For the customer care team, it's going to be, showing them the value they bring on an individual daily basis with how we take our calls. And that's something I think we do okay here is we provide daily reporting and metrics to the individual so they know where they fit compared to the rest of the team. So I think we put a check mark in that particular box. But I got to shift my thinking around that financial goal piece and ensuring the team, everybody has buy-in and knowing where they fit into the big picture. So it's a good concept for me.
Yeah, and again, I would urge you to go to your owners and say, listen, I know you're not going to share the big picture, but can we get some sort of incentives going or something kind of put to the side so that I can get more aggressive? Which means you want to have stretch goals. I want to be able to pull them sort of forward. If they don't have goals and then that isn't stretching them, again, what happens is it gets very easy to lose focus. So you want them sort of always kind of eye on the prize. As we've already indicated, the prize isn't the big picture or the bottom line, but it should be a number that they can aspire to and that you can constantly have conversations about. And so I urge you that, the conversation with the owners, or at least sort of say, hey, we know what engagement is. To really stretch my guys in terms of performance, I need to be able to put some numbers up there sort of in pie in the sky to have them aiming for that, and that we sort of build towards that. I promise you, even just that exercise will, at the bottom line, will help them have a better financial picture. So your owners will be happy,
Sure.
I promise.
I like it. I'm going to let them know that
So
Shane
good
said.
conversation. Yeah, listen, and by the way, I'm not afraid to get on a call with them either. As I sort of said, I've done that a few times. Anyone else out there with some thoughts on any of the objectives about pulling this down? We've had a good conversation there about financial, customer satisfaction. Most of you are probably on the CX side, so you've got some numbers in that coming in. How are you doing with your CX numbers? Are you sharing those? Have you set goals? And does everyone feel that they're contributing to it? Anyone want to comment on that? Michael?
Okay, yeah. So for us, I think what happens is that the last quarter of each year, senior management will share what their goals are for our department with us. And so if I take, for example, 2020, what they are looking out for is for us to have a CS, customer effort score, of 30, a net promoter score of 60, complaint management of not more than 3%, customer resolution, that's a first contact resolution of 98%. And so before the financial year begins, we already have these targets, and each subunit within the department is allotted these targets. And so for me, if you take my unit, for example, what basically we do is that I share these targets with my desk, and we analyze the target, and then we come up with remediating measures. And so right from the word go, everybody understands what is expected of them. And so once we hit the ground, I can tell you, we are in half year and we've already exceeded our targets.
Nice job. And again, I love hearing that, because again, it gives you what we're all focusing on. And obviously in your situation, you've actually got that as one of your main responsibilities. I want to talk, when it comes to the objectives, just to kind of keep this in mind, and it touches on the next one, is you've got to share scores. And one of the things that we often see is that employees don't understand the measurements. And again, I use my P&L because it's probably the easiest one. Most employees wouldn't be able to break down a P&L. Actually, a lot of supervisors, even some managers, can't break down a P&L very well. One of the pieces that, again, it's a best practice that we see more and more organizations is that they actually teach employees how to understand financial numbers, customer service numbers, employee satisfaction numbers. One of the key elements for them to be engaged is that they need to be able to not just see a number up on a wall. They have to be able to understand what it exactly means. And so the best practice that I urge you is to spend some time when these goals come out each year, like Michael talked about, or as you set goals, but break it down to how those goals are being measured. In terms of customer satisfaction, it might be employee customer feedback. It might be a survey that goes out. It might be your social media reputation based on what's said online. There are a number of different ways to measure it. For employee engagement, you may have things like obviously a satisfaction survey, engagement survey, but you may have turnover in the first 90 days. That's a big one. As I said in the warehouse, I was talking about breakage and loss is a number that they look at really clearly. So understanding what the score is that's letting them know that they're being successful or not, and most importantly, where that score comes from. That requires a little bit of education, but I promise you the big difference is rather than just sharing and throwing out a bunch of numbers, taking a few minutes to educate them on where the number comes from, why that number is important, and then, as I sort of said, how it's tracking versus the goals. So if Michael just talked about his, different goals that he's kind of set, it's not just good enough to say, hey, we're at 95% this month. It's, hey, this is where we are to our goal. This is how it was measured and where it came from, where the numbers came from. Was it employee feedback? Was it from the internet? And so that they understand that this isn't sort of coming out of fresh air, that these are real numbers, real scores. So please make sure that you're thinking about that. The other thing I want to say about the customer scores is make sure you're sharing the feedback, positive and negative. I still go to too many organizations today where they're very limited in what they share. They might share the good stuff, but don't share the bad stuff, the reality. It's balanced, it's there. Or they might only share the negative feedback and don't share the good feedback. Remember, the feedback from whether it's your customers, even some of your employees, make sure they're seeing visually or hearing from customers what they're saying about you, whether it's putting up a chart or just a sheet in the break room or in an office area where, hey, here's printout of our customer comments, reviewing them in meetings, however it is. Please make sure scores and feedback, you cannot hide that if you want your people to feel engaged, and it's okay to share the good and the bad. Any comments on that out there about anybody thinking about sharing? They share good information. Let's see, Kobe, you got some thoughts on that? I can see you right there, my friend. What do you think? How about sharing feedback and scores? How are you doing it?
Our managers actually are involved in the customer satisfaction part. So we have a system in place where if a customer files a complaint, the managers actually have the ability to see the complaint and then sometimes respond to it. If they don't respond to it in a certain period of time or it hasn't been resolved satisfactorily, it gets escalated to the district managers. And it just goes up a chain from there. So they do see a lot of the scores. But in terms of sharing them with the employees, I don't think that ever gets trickled down beyond the manager.
So again, that's perfect. And I will tell you that is a common kind of occurrence. Now, what do you think happens when employees don't think or don't see this feedback? What do you think the outcome would be? Kobe, what do you think?
Probably just repeat the same processes over and over and over again because nobody says anything to them about it.
You hit it. You're missing about the learning opportunity. And that's why I think this is so key, is that the feedback and scores is how you learn and how you sort of see where you're doing, but it's critical feedback. It's not just the manager who's continually repeating, hey, you guys are doing a good job or you guys are doing a bad job. By actually showing this is real customer feedback. So the learning and the evolution of changing or shifting or thinking a little differently is being missed when the managers are the only people keeping the scores. Listen, managers need to know the scores. They need to know the feedback, but I'm going to go back to my original premise. If you want your employees involved and interested in helping to make the company successful, you've got to be willing to be transparent on the scores with them. And again, getting them into that kind of routine of expecting scores, expecting information, leads you to the next critical part of the process, which is talking about them and starting to then think about how do we get better. And this is where we sort of want to get to. I hear this all the time that, we're good at getting our employees ideas. And I'm all for it. I see, collection boxes and managers will say, I ask my employees for ideas all the time. The challenge that we see is that those ideas aren't being connected to objectives and feedback, which means the ideas could be all over the place. Who knows what they are? What I would urge you to start thinking about is when you've got objectives, when you're sharing scores, every month, and again, I'm going to show you a little bit later what I call my monthly engagement meeting. You have this meeting, but you go, all right, here's where we wanted to get to. Here's where we are today. How do we get better? And it's actually starting to engage them in the brainstorming of ideas and discussions. This is the piece that I often find that misses, is that we can ask for ideas, but we don't do anything with it. And the piece that I often fall into is what we need is an action plan. You've got to have the discipline to write this down. This is why I love this kind of quote, you know, a dream written down with a date becomes a goal. That for me is critical. Write it down and have a due date. A goal broken down into action steps then becomes a true plan. And then a plan, whether it's not your dreams, it certainly can make your objectives come true. Again, I go to a lot of organizations, and one of the things that stands out for me is that they're not working, or the managers aren't working off a consistent action plan. An action plan that can be shared, that can be put up on a wall, that can be reviewed up and down the organization, which means you use it to share information up and share information down. An action plan is the best way to collect information and then share it back. The things that I put up here on the screen is just some of the key elements of effective action planning. All of these could have come together. I'm going to show you an example of what a template might look like. You've all probably got your own action plans, all that out there. I want to make sure that you understand that they have to have some key elements to it. First of all activities on an action plan has to connect to an overall objective. Overall objective, I want to improve my financials. I want to drive revenues. I want to manage expenses. I want to improve employee engagement. I want to improve my customer. Whatever it is, you got to have your objective. I've already talked about know how to measure success, know what your scores are. So it's very important. If you're not willing to measure this, then don't waste your time. Measurement is the key part in all of this. So I got to have my activities connected to an objective. I got to know how to measure the score. And then I have to know all the steps I need to get there. And this is where your employees are great at helping you come up with different ideas. They can kind of come up with, well, what should we do? What's the first step, the second step? What I've seen is that the more that you lay out your steps, the more I believe you're actually going to hit your goals. Because again, it has an understanding that there is steps in the process rather than just kind of miraculously having it turn up. Remember, you got to have people that are responsible. And by the way, the people responsible isn't always the manager. I often find that this is another area where managers can become overloaded, because what happens is they're responsible for everything, therefore they have to do everything. Get your employees involved, have their names next to a task, even if it's just a simple task. But again, you have to have who's responsible. Obviously, we talked about you got to have due dates, and again, be tough on those due dates. And then make sure that you understand that, you know, whenever you're moving forward, there's always a cost, time, money, resources. Make sure you understand what those costs look like. And then, as I said, if you create a good action plan, share it. Share it with those above you, but more importantly, share it with your employees so that it is easily seen. This is the Culture Hacker one that we utilize. You guys, as I said, probably have your own version of this. We use this with a lot of different organizations. Obviously, objective, you know, if you've got big five, I have 5 of these. My objective can be like to drive financials, drive revenues, how I'm going to measure it. And then there's the action. The action might be sales training, going back to the inside of sales that Chris talked about. There might be sales training, all the steps and the type of training, how it's going to be delivered, when, who's responsible for it, when it's going to occur. And then, as I sort of said, making sure we understand the financial and personnel tools to it. This, again, is something that we've utilized. It's certainly not the only template. The most important thing that I give out there to you is that, one, have an action plan, have a way to collect ideas, and then be willing to share this action plan. As I said, put it up on a wall if you have to. We blow these up and we put it in the employee break rooms. So that way employees can see, one, that their ideas or the things that you're working on is moving along. And this is a critical part of that step, is that not just collecting ideas, but letting them see that maybe some of the ideas are having a contribution. So I want to put it out. And again, anybody got thoughts on action plans? As I said, you certainly don't need to have this one, but having your own action plan, but more importantly, who you're sharing that action plan with and how you're engaging your employees in collecting some of their ideas. Paul, I sort of see you there. Have you got any thoughts or comments on that?
Yeah, hi. First, can you hear me, guys?
Yep, we got you. Thank you.
Cool. Lovely. Yeah, apologies. You've got my photograph. I'm in my pajamas. It's 7:30 in the morning here in New Zealand. So,
mate, I'm in New Zealand, and I got to get out of my pajamas. Come on.
Yeah, well, yeah, hey, you're the star of the show, though. Um, hey, this is music to my ears, Shane, because getting people to move from measuring to understanding what they're trying to do in their business to linking it back to customer experience that's a huge effort, and then actually getting them to take action as a result is the biggest hurdle of all. So what we do with our clients is we take them through this whole process of linking the customer experience to the business objectives, are very much along the lines you've been describing. But then when we do our monthly measurements in customer experience, we work with the individual teams throughout that organization in developing what we call remedial action plans. So every time there's an observation, this is some feedback coming from customers, this is an issue, this is an area of poor performance, that team who are responsible for those particular processes then zero in on what those sources of dissatisfaction are. They look at the impact they have, not only on customers, but the impact they have on the business. They have a look at the impact it has on staff. And then they start putting together as a team a remedial action plan. And then we measure that and report on its progress and look at how that improvement has had an improvement to customers, staff, and the business. So it's a great message. And when it works, it works. So I love what you're saying.
Listen, thank you. And again, you delivered that perfectly in how to sort of approach it. I think the key for me, if you've heard something through this, it's about this transparency. Share your objectives, let them know what's going on, share the scores, share the action plan. This is about shifting. And I often have a quote that I often say, the only way for a manager to become indispensable is to become dispensable. And managers have a hard time with this, because what that means is, I always say the success of a business is what happens when the manager's away, not when they're there. To become indispensable means that it's not just about you. I find many managers get very defensive and very protective of their space, of their smarts, of their world, of their fiefdom, of their kingdom. You name that word, but they get very protective of it. I get it. This is about being more transparent and opening up. It's about developing people. It's about developing managers, letting them understand that one of the most important things that a manager has to do is deliver results. Again, being relentlessly focused on results. If you don't deliver on results, you're not going to be successful. What I do know is that if you don't engage those around you, those results are a lot harder to come by. I go back to financial performance. If you're not involving your employees in driving revenues and managing expenses, gosh, that's a very difficult thing to do from the ivory tower at the top. Getting everyone involved. We're doing, again, a luxury hospitality group based in the Southern Hemisphere. They're, again, right now with COVID, getting just pummeled right now because of anything in hospitality. So one of the things that they came up with was, how they'll help with managing expenses is to really push the whole energy conservation idea. Nothing rocket science, but, leaving light bulbs on, turning technology or computers off, and turning taps off. These are three simple ideas. And they one of the action items was, and this came from an employee, was let's do a big push. Let's promote it, put some posters up, kind of started this push. Very, very simple idea, but it connected back not only to financial position, but they also liked it because it was their community was very much about environment as well. So those things are the simple action items that get people rallying around it. And I go back to interest and involvement. You have to have that if you're truly serious about delivering those results. And again, just think about that, give them responsibility for implementation. I think this is the other piece that's often kind of forgotten, is that, getting your employees involved in the implementing of something, not just the coming up with an idea. I often find it's like, hey, a manager collects all the ideas and they go away and try and work out what needs to be implemented and how to do it. Get your employees involved in that. For instance, and again, it might sound a simple one, but the action item of energy conservation, the employees came up with an idea of sort of promoting it. So guess what? They created the posters. They got a small budget. They got them printed out. They had to put them up. it's their program, it's their initiative. And by the way, they're basically promoting to themselves because again, they're talking about it. That's what I mean about giving them responsibility for implementation and making them feel a part of it. I wanted to talk a while about one sort of piece, one tool of this that I think has been very effective, and it's probably a best practice we've seen in organizations. A lot of companies, departments have their departmental meeting, monthly departmental meeting. I'm not sure in a lot of the meetings I've seen that effective. But what I have picked up over the last few years is what's called a monthly engagement meeting. And again, the engagement is involvement and interest in helping us get better. And these monthly engagement meetings I found kind of interesting because they're a takeoff of the department meeting, but they're focused on this idea of engagement, which is objectives, scores, brainstorming, giving us sort of updates. And so I urge you to think about this, and I kind of put an agenda here of what these sort of look like as you're thinking about a monthly departmental meeting and how to turn on these engagement meetings. You know, the typical welcome, review the agenda. The first part of the meeting is about reviewing the latest scores. All right, again, how are we doing this month? You might not always have monthly information to update on, but you review the scores, talk about feedback. Hey, we got some feedback in from our customers. This is what was going on. And what we found very effective when we looked at these type of meetings was then talk to the employees how their individual roles impacted the various scores there. And by the way, that's not a lecture. That's, hey, John, how do you think you impacted that this month? One of the really great questions to ask an employee is, how did you impact this score? Really simple. How did you impact the score? Get them to start thinking, well, financial, how did you impact the score? Well, I felt I was on top of my sales game this month. You know what? I implemented this conservation program to turn taps off, and I would make sure that at the end of every day I was turning lights off. This could be really simple stuff, but it's a really great way to connect some dots there. But ask them that. How did you impact the scores that we see this month? Give the update on the plan, you know, put it up on a screen, make sure everyone has a copy. You know, I always make sure that every month you're talking about implementation timelines. Hey, what did we just finish? People love it when you talk about something that was done, or they can see something that was done. I think that's a really important part of this. They also like to know what's coming up, but share like, hey, we got this done this month. Hey, we're checking to see how this is, knowing that sometimes some of the things we implemented might not work, so we can pivot very quickly, but always give them an update of times. Allow them an opportunity to ask questions about implementation dates, what's coming up, and then brainstorm. The one thing that I want you to remember that when it comes to brainstorming is that you brainstorm without critiquing. I allow for about 15 minutes of brainstorming where people just throw out ideas. The engagement meeting is not the time to work out which ideas have merit and which is not, or just go down a rabbit hole of discussing what's possible and not possible. Just collect ideas. And then what you do is you can sit back in your office as the manager and start to think through, hey, you know, a couple of these might be worthwhile. Let's think about which ones we might want to focus on. So get used to brainstorming without critiquing. It becomes very fast, very quick, and very effective. And then the other piece that we saw when these engagement meetings, or if you do a monthly meeting, make sure you're recognizing individuals that contributed to making a difference to your scores. And again, we've talked, if you've been in on some of my other sessions, about performance. What we're recognizing is in people that contributed to the score. They were highly engaged. They took ownership. For instance, there was 2 employees that really took ownership of this conservation idea that I just threw out. They are recognized for their high level engagement. We have someone who's doing really well in their sales. We're having someone who's really contributing, did great at customer service this month. You're recognizing their engagement, which is their effort to contribute to the goals. And this is what I often see, is that we're not recognizing people for reasons or how they were involved in contributing success. We recognize people because they're good people, or we might say, hey, I want to recognize John this month. He's been doing an outstanding job. It's really awesome. Everybody high fives for John. And I'm like, you missed the opportunity. Hey, I want to recognize John this month. You know what? John was a big part. He knocked his sales numbers out and was a big part of us hitting our budget this month. Or I want to recognize Mary. She was in charge of our conservation. And you know what Mary did is she made sure at the end of every day that the lights were off and the tech was off. You didn't realize it, but she was a big reason that our numbers were great this month. Hey, I want to recognize Joseph. You know what? Joseph got 3 comments back from customers about his outstanding interaction, and he was a big part of us contributing to our great customer experience score this month. Connect your recognition to those objectives. Stop being vague and sort of there and kind of like, hey, we're recognizing you for being cool. Focus it in. This will give and really target your employees to think more about the most important thing. What have they done to contribute to the success of your organization? So that's kind of like what I wanted to talk about in terms of engagement. I want to leave or finish up on this is just a great quote that kind of typifies, I think, how I focus and think about this. Listen, you know what? Make your people feel that at the heart of things, not on the periphery. That would be it. Again, I know that, like Chris talked about, some owners don't want to share financials. There's some numbers, but your goal is to make your employees feel that they're part of this, that they make a difference to the success of the organization. When people feel that they are able to contribute, make a difference, that's when their work has meaning. When their work has meaning, then they truly are in a position to make a difference. So that's my piece about engagement. Again, hopefully that's clarified some pieces, reinforced some of the things that you're doing, giving you some perspective to think about. I am relentlessly focused on performance. All the businesses that I manage, or I run, that I'm involved in, it is about getting the desired results. The best way I know how to do it is get as many people involved as possible. That's employee engagement. Hopefully you guys found that interesting today. So I know we have a little bit of time sort of left that I just wanted to open up. If anyone had any thoughts or questions to kind of put out there while we sort of talk about this idea of engagement, opening it up and sort of go down sort of the list there. Alex, again, I'm sorry we didn't get to hear from you. Any thoughts? Are you able to come off mute and share any ideas or thoughts with us today?
Yeah, you bet. First of all, thank you. You know, definitely everything that you've talked about rings true. Even though I work for a colossal company, I always try to bring it localized. I try to be, you know, I like your point about make it specific for recognition, because so many times I've heard, oh, right, oh, you know, Shane, he did a great job this week. Well, what did he do a great job at, and how did that impact us? And so that's something that you know, I really try to focus on whenever I do recognition, and I appreciate you bringing up that point.
Awesome, Alex. Thanks so much for joining today. Cheryl, you able to come off and any thoughts?
Can you hear me now?
Got you. Great to hear you. Hey, Cheryl.
Hey, I think it's always great to recognize people. I see a lot of organizations from my experience that don't do that. And I believe wholeheartedly that it does help people feel valued, feel like they're contributing, and actually seeing some results from the work. They're not stabbing in the dark. So that really resonates with me. And I really enjoy these meetings. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Cheryl. Awesome. All right, Chris, any other thoughts there? I know we, you know, food for thought. Any other ideas you want to take or think about?
I'm going to pile on with the direction that the group has taken us, which is the recognition, right? We've got a long story short, one of our functions is a person that goes to a home to do some work in our material, and they're often recognized by the homeowner. And we absolutely pencil whip the email by saying, hey, Joe, way to go. Nice job, man. And we don't take the opportunity, Shane. You're nailing it, right? We're quick to just, hey, nice job. Way to go. Way to represent Cambria. Nice job. Tie it to a goal, for Pete's sakes. Let's show them how they're adding value to the overall direction of the company. It's such an easy concept that I will be absolutely instilling the next opportunity I get. So it's a great one to take forward. So I appreciate it.
Good, Chris. Thanks for joining us again today. Kobe, any thoughts there before we wrap this up? What do you think?
I think I'm pretty much in line with everybody else. I mean, I'm not going to say that we don't recognize our employees. I think a lot of people do. I think we just don't do it the right way. So again, going back to what you said, and following on what a lot of everybody else said is, we'll say that somebody did a good job at something. We may even tell what that good job was, but we never actually tied into something to where the employee feels like it really had some impact on the company.
Yeah. Listen, awesome. And by the way, guys, if you are interested in recognition, I'm teasing the next seminar that we're doing coming up about coaching. We touch on recognition, and I'm going to talk to you about why employees don't think you recognize them enough. There's some really simple, basic ideas that every manager I know thinks they do a great job of recognition. We've touched on one of the things today. We're not specific about why the recognition is there. Therefore, it just kind of goes in one ear and out the other. But again, recognition connected to goals and connected to impact. I work with a lot of other really great thought leaders. Another quick idea is every end of the week, every Friday, I'm not sure if you have your daily meetings or sort of weekly meetings. Don't even wait for the monthly one. The most basic question, ask your employees, how did you have an impact this week? How did you make a difference? Again, connects them back to these ideas of the larger picture. Hey, how did you make a difference this week? Hey, I know one of our big goals is about customer satisfaction. Who did you blow out of the water this week? However you want to word it, keep them coming back to the idea that everything they do is connected to an objective, a goal, and making a difference in our organization. So really cool stuff there. Michael, how are you doing? Any thoughts before we wrap it up?
You're on mute, Michael.
Michael, you got the mute on, buddy.
Okay. Sorry. I remember one of my teammates told me that I don't recognize them enough. And I got a bit confused because I know, when they do a good job, I tell them they've done a good job. But just listening to you makes me understand, where I wasn't doing things right.
And as I said, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think in some cases we don't do it right because it's a lot of work for the manager. You need to connect, exactly what the person is doing to the praise, and in some cases it's a bit of work, doing that.
Listen, awesome stuff. As I said, guys, we talk more about recognition because there's even some more tips and tricks about why your recognition may not be landing. I just know one of the big ones is connect it to the results. If you're talking about objectives, link it back. Listen, guys, I really appreciate, as always, connecting dots, getting to know you guys a little bit more. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully we shared some insight. So Abraham, give it back to you.
All right, well, thank you, Shane. What I'd like to ask of you all, and please, I want you to come back, but when you come back to the next webinar or Zoom meeting that we're doing here, tell us how you implemented the things that Shane has done. We want to know what kind of impact is. These are excellent ideas, but like Shane says, if you don't do anything about it, they're not going to happen. But we want to hear from you how effective we are in presenting these webinars or these meetings for you to see if we're making any impact in your company. And so we can get some recognition from you, right? Saying, hey, Shane, you impacted my bottom line by this particular thing here. And we're going to offer you more stuff to help you as well. I don't know if you saw that, but I have a little link in there that we have a pack in here for when there's no cost to this. If you qualify for this particularly, I think if I can screen share it real quick here. Here it is. And we've got our culture hack strategy session in a toolbox here. It's worth about $3,000 worth of stuff here, but look at all this, like with the sheet that Shane showed you. And when you see in every webinar that we have, we show a little tool that we're applying to whatever the webinar is. Well, here, it's all here. So if you qualify for this particular package here, then please take it. It's not going to cost you anything. Shane's even going to give you some of his time there and on a personal level to be able to help you make even more impact. There's no commitment to anything. As you see, we offer these webinars. We're not trying to really sell you anything. We're just trying to get you to know us or like us and trust us. So when you do come around to a time when you do need something, you'll remember us. And as the people that will help you. Or Shane, I'm basically the guy trying to help you guys meet people like Shane. So please, do you think, Alex, do you think you'll come back again and tell us about how you implemented some stuff?
Yeah, of course, you bet.
Okay, Kobe? I know Kobe and I have been going back and forth. We've been, he's my new best friend, man.
Yeah, I'll definitely be back. Look, I appreciate you being patient with me on this.
Oh no, man, we value everybody that's interested in what we have to offer. You're gold to us. We want to make sure you get into and you see, 'cause it's like a thing, when you have something good and how you want to just give it to people. You're just like, I got something so good. I want to get, this is what this stuff is. This is like diamonds that I'm trying to help you guys get here. So please, I just would like to be able to go back and go do this stuff, implement, come back, and we can even the next webinar, we'll take a little time to hear about it. What happened, and also that Chris, you going to do this? You in?
Nope, I find this to be a waste of time. Absolutely, Abraham. It's for me, I'm taking this right to my team, and again, I'm actually going to put together a quick email to challenge my team when they get this feedback to not just say, hey, so and so did a nice job, but I want them to tie it to one of our 4 company goals before they submit it to me. And if they don't give me that, I'm going to push it back and say, hey, when you're recognizing, let's tie it to one of our goals. So let's get them thinking about it, along with recognizing the person about it as well. So that's going to happen today.
That's right. You also have those other ideas that you are trying to implement too, where you can try to get the owners on board.
Right.
Haven't talked to Shane. Shane doesn't mind talking to, like you said, he'll speak to them. He's not trying to get into their pocket. He's trying to help fill their pocket. You know what I'm saying? And
yep.
There's something that's Paul. You guys are you don't know Paul? Shane, you never heard of Paul? He's in your hood.
I know.
Yeah, Shane, we're going to have to catch up, definitely.
Oh, you guys know each other?
No,
you don't know.
We do now.
Okay, great. Well, when I saw New Zealand on your thing, I was they must know each other. I mean, but
hey, it's a little bit bigger than that, Abraham. Come on, don't buy into this. Don't buy into this kind of myth that New Zealand is so small. We know everyone down here. Come on.
I thought everybody in New Zealand knew everybody over there already. Right? So anyway. All right, so we'll want to thank you all. If you have anything you would like to ask or you want to contribute into, please feel free to do that now. If not, then we'll, I think it's 7:30 in the morning or 8 o'clock for Shane. Right now it's like 11 p.m. for me. What time is it for you, Michael?
So that's 6 minutes after 8 p.m.
Oh, okay. So I think Shaq and I are probably the latest here. So that's it, man. We're gonna turn into pumpkins. So anyway, thank you all, and I hope, please, I'll send you out. I guess the next webinar to make sure you get it. And if you don't see anything like the replays or whatever, or if you need something, I know Cheryl wanted to get the slides. So if you need one slide, whatever you need, just let me know. I'll let Shane know, and we'll get you what you need. That's what we're here for. But please, if that offer that we have for you prepared will help you, take it. Don't just take it. I mean, we only can do so many per month. So please get a hold of that offer there. Okay. So thank you so much. Appreciate you guys. I'm recognizing you all, for coming to this webinar.
Take care, guys.
Can I talk to you briefly?
Yeah. I've got to run. So just quickly. Yeah. See you guys.
Thanks all. I got to jump. Bye-bye.
Okay, so Shane, I sent you the mail. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah, I got it. We'll get something back to you.
Okay, that's fine. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I got it. We're putting it together right now, so I'll give you something. You'll get something back to me later today, tomorrow.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Michael's been like a faithful every week. He's been coming on. He also has shared with us some of their native food. He's in Ghana. And they have something called fufu. I still haven't tried it yet. I'm gonna have to. Yeah, Kobe, have you ever heard of fufu?
No, never heard of that.
No, how about you, Alex? You ever heard of fufu?
Try it, you love it.
Today's my first day.
Yeah, he told us. I had to go look it up myself and see what it is. What the fufu is, but it seems to be something yummy over there in Ghana. Because I wouldn't. I never have seen a Ghanaian restaurant. you know, around anywhere. So I'm from LA originally, so they, you know, got everything over there, right? So, but all right, man. So we got so wait, now you're in, where are you, Kobe? You in Chicago?
Baltimore, Maryland.
Where at? Maryland?
Yes.
You're in Maryland. Okay. And then Alex, you're in Chicago, right? I think, okay.
To go, guys. So thanks for being here. Thanks, guys.
All right. Yeah.
to go.
Shaq's ready to go. He's ready to go to sleep. All right, Shaq.
I'm done.
All right, guys.
Bye.
We'll see you guys. Hopefully we'll, like I say, please be in touch. Whatever I can do to help you guys out. Please, you know, I'm also looking, you know, I got other people that I've worked with. We have, I'm working on a platform right now to try to put on, or Shaq and I are working on a platform to organize all these webinars that we have. I also did the CX Success Summit, which I had over, oh gosh, I had over 35 speakers on that one. And all these things I'm trying to put together, so we have a little hub for you guys to be able to find all this stuff without having to go look all over the place, right? Once you get it, I know you get the email from me, and then that's it. It sits in an email. So I figured maybe it'd be nice to give you guys a hub where you could go to it, and then it's all stored there for you. So, you know, we got all our people working on it. It's, you know, Shaq and I are basically all our people. So
Yeah, I actually like that.
that's it. Yeah, we're not any kind of big organization. I started the group, and I started this LinkedIn group, and just, you know, complaining about customer experience, and it grew into like over 200,000. Well, actually mine grew into 50,000, and I met Steve, and we got together. Now we're over 200,000 members. And I was really not my field. You know, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I got all these. I gotta do something about this. You know, so I ran these summits. One was a CX Success Summit. The other one was the call center. What is it called? I forgot. Virtual Summit, Call Center Virtual Summit. And so we were trying to. Now I'm doing this whole webinar series. You know, with Shane. You know, he was from the original CX Success Summit. And I got another summit coming. It has absolutely nothing to do with this, which is it's the work from home voiceover summit. So, you know, people that are interested in getting into to use their voice, you know, to make a little bit of money. So I like personally, you know, something I like to do, because you can hear my voice is kind of like that. I've done some work like that professionally, and I figured, hey, why don't I do a summit? I'll figure out how the whole thing works. But you know what's happening is AI is coming in, and they're killing it. You know, it's eventually none of us are going to have jobs. It's going to be robots doing all our jobs, right? But I bet there's no robot making foo-foo though.
I can assure you of that. You have a good night.
All right, you guys have a great day. Nice to meet Kobe. Nice to meet you finally.
Yes, Abraham, definitely nice to meet you too. Michael, it's nice to meet you as well.
Nice to meet you.
Now I'm gonna have to find me a Ghana restaurant and see if I can get some food.
All right, I want to hear about this. All right, bye-bye.
All right.